AI adoption in product teams is often messy, inconsistent, and tool-driven, but it doesn't have to be. Today, we're joined by Michael Hirsch, an AI strategist, product leadership coach, and founder of Break a Pencil Consulting. With over 20 years of experience and a reputation for turning AI confusion into confident capability, Michael helps product leaders and teams make AI work in the real world. In this conversation, we explore what it takes to build AI-confident teams strategically, systematically, and sustainably. You'll learn how to move from experimentation to real capability, how to get non-technical teams using AI effectively, and why most efforts stall without cultural alignment. Michael, welcome to Just Curious.
Thanks for having me.
You've had a long and diverse career in product, from Qualcomm and here to teaching AI strategy and strategy. What led you to focus on helping product leaders and teams adopt AI?
Yeah, thanks. So there was two sort of epiphanies I had that combined got there. The first was, over the course of my career, 4 different times at 4 different companies, I started as an individual contributor and was eventually promoted to a product leader, meaning managing product managers. And not once did anybody take me aside and say, this is how you have to be a product leader. These are the additional skills or the additional things you need to focus on. So I learned it eventually, but I made a bunch of mistakes along the way. So I realized, and this is kind of what I started to focus on 2 years ago when I started my own business. I realized that there's a lot out there to help product managers learn how to be a product manager, but there's not a lot out there about product leaders. One of the things I tell product leaders that I work with is your team is now your new product. That's the thing you have to worry about every day when you wake up. So there's a gap in helping create great product leaders. Combine that with AI taking over everything today. And I realized that product leaders need some help figuring out how they're going to bring AI, not just into their daily work, but into their team's daily work. And doing it, kind of relying on the team to figure it out on their own, just creates chaos and isn't effective. So based on my experience, both bad and good of becoming a product leader, and then the experience I've had with integrating and working with AI on a regular basis and working with product teams as to how to bring that into the fold, that's what led me to what I'm doing today.
Can you tell us a little bit about Break a Pencil, what you do and who you do it for? I assume it's for product leaders, but tell us a little bit about what you do for them.
Yeah. So Break a Pencil Consulting, my own business, ultimately I'm a product coach and a product consultant. So my focus is anything I can do to help product managers, aspiring product leaders. So some of the clients I work with, I'm coaching them on how to be a better leader or how to work towards getting the next promotion, going from senior to director, from director to VP. But I also, because of this intersection of this gap in product leadership and AI, I've also done a lot of private and public cohort-based courses, specifically trying to help product leaders help get their teams AI empowered, if you will. And I also, with Break a Pencil Consulting, have done some product consulting, helping some companies with product strategy and things like that.
Tell us a little bit about AI and product. Why is it such a critical shift for product leaders, and what's at stake for those who don't adapt?
So what's at stake for those who don't adapt is what I often say, and others say this too, is AI is not going to take a product manager or a product leader's job, but a product manager or a product leader who understand and use AI will take your job. So what's at stake is ultimately your livelihood, in my opinion. And there's a couple of reasons. There's sort of two ways that we look at AI when it comes to product managers and product leaders. The first is, how do I incorporate it into my day-to-day workflow? And the second is, how do I incorporate it into my product itself, right? So one is using AI and the other is developing AI or developing AI-enabled products and features. And so what we found really is that if you're not doing it, you're going to be falling behind on productivity because you need to be able to be more productive, be able to get more done with less. And AI absolutely helps with that on your day-to-day workflow. And every product these days is trying to figure out, every business these days is trying to figure out how they're going to incorporate AI into their work. And product managers and product leaders all around the world, that's what they're paying attention to. And that's what they're trying to crack the code. So if you try to sort of dodge and avoid AI, you're going to find yourself, I think, out of a career pretty soon.
Yeah. You mentioned the importance of integrating AI into workflows. What are the common challenges you see when organizations struggle with that, and how do you address them?
Yeah, there's two big challenges I see with organizations when it comes to AI adoption. The first is oftentimes they'll lead with policy. So they'll say, this is how we're going to, this is what you can do. These are the tools we are going to allow you to use or not allow you to use, or what you can't use, what content or company information can't go into it. So they lead with policy before they've even figured out kind of the practical application and practical needs. That's one. And the second one is when people, individuals in a company start using AI, they kind of just jump in, which is fine. And so you end up with a very scattered and almost haphazard approach, which if you're single person, you can do that and eventually you'll figure out kind of how to incorporate it. But if you're a part of a team and a part of a larger organization, that's chaotic. And so the second problem I see companies is they kind of just say, okay, try it. They don't put any structure around it. They don't help organize. How do we identify where in our workflow we want to bring it in? Develop some common tools, some common language. They just kind of skip that step entirely.
Let's unpack both of those. So the first was leading with policy or
Yeah.
tool chasing. How do you help organizations not do that? And what do you recommend they do instead?
So the way I help them not do that is push them, whatever team or leader I'm working with, to try and use as many different tools and in as many different ways as possible to try to find the combination that's going to be right for them and for their organization. And so I kind of just advise them to sort of push those boundaries, even if in some cases that's going to go beyond the policy, right? Okay, fine, do it at home, do it on your own personal machine, but you really need to try to explore a fair bit. And the reason it's a problem, or basically the way I try to tell companies how to not do it that way is, I mean, that's analogous to us building a product before we've actually ever talked to customers. We know how customers are going to do this, so we're going to build the product. And as we know, that almost never works. And so what we have to do is we have to understand what are the needs of the customer. In this case, it's the employees in the organization. And once we understand that, then we can define how we enable them to do those things, and we could build policy around it then.
What's the role of leadership in AI transformation? You mentioned the customer is the employee. Oftentimes those employees are lower level or mid-level employees. What's the role of the leadership and where do most leaders fall short?
I think the role of leadership is twofold. The first is to create a safe space, to give the freedom to experiment, to try things, to use AI, right? Let's get out of this mindset where if I'm doing something, if I'm working with Chat GPT or something and somebody comes and walks behind me, I quickly switch to a different screen, right? Like there shouldn't be any stigma with it. So get rid of that. Give license and freedom to try things, experiment, and investigate and learn. The second thing that leadership needs to do is create order out of the chaos. Because if you just do the first thing, you'll create chaos. It's the right first step, but you want to then control that chaos. Because now you have all sorts of people going in this direction and that direction using AI. Some people are like, I'm scared, I'm not going to use it. So you have different usage, different tools, different varying degrees of expertise. So put some order around that chaos. And what that looks like is help guide a team, right? It's not mandating, it's not dictating this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but help guide the team to figure that out together so they can establish some practices, some consistent language, some consistent usage models, and they can start rapidly bringing AI into their daily workflow. So that's what leaders need to do is they've got to give freedom and then control the chaos.
I'm really interested in the most meaningful and common AI use cases within product. You've designed a framework, the ABC&D framework. Tell us about that and how it helps teams identify the best use cases for their orgs.
Yeah, when I started down this path about a year or so ago, a common question I got is, where do we start? Right? As a product manager, we do a lot of different things, right? And, we write requirements, we have customer interviews, we're running on sales calls, we're doing stakeholder communications, we're triaging bugs, we're creating roadmaps, we're prioritizing, we do all sorts of things. And we're extremely busy. I've not met a product manager who has spare time to sort of think about how they do their work and ways to which they can improve their work. They're just trying to stay above water typically. And that's getting even worse as companies are really trying to get more out of their employees as much as they can. And so basically, so this ABC&D framework is meant to respond to that. It's meant to basically help product leaders and the team figure out where there are good opportunities in your workflow to insert AI. So let me just kind of step through it. A is analyze, right? So look at your workflow and look for places that either have a lot of data or places that take a lot of time and are relatively routine and repeatable, or high impact areas. And those are good candidates. So you kind of do that. B is brainstorm. So then of those maybe one or two or three areas you identified, start brainstorming how we might use AI to help with that. Right. So stakeholder communications, we might have AI help us translate our message and tune it for each of the stakeholder audiences we have. So we don't send the same update to the CEO that we send to the VP of engineering, that we send to the VP of sales. We send each of them, it's based on the same core knowledge, but it's tuned to the things that those individual stakeholders care about. Right. So let's say that's, what we're doing. So that's brainstorm. 3 is conduct some experiments. So now just try it, actually go and do it, but do it in a sort of scientific experimental method, right? You've got a hypothesis that this is going to work, and then diagnose it. That's the D. After the fact is, did it work? Did it not work? What could I do to improve it? Iterate on that until you've finally figured out, yep, this is how I'm going to use AI consistently for this particular business process in my workflow. And when done as a team, the whole team is doing it. And the whole team has common understanding and language around it. And as a product leader, when your whole team now has taken a process and enabled it or boosted it with AI, your team looks better, you look better. And that's kind of where everything rises up. So I think the main piece there really, and this is kind of where the ABC&D framework is where do I start?
Yeah. And what does the A look like in practice? Are we looking at what we do every day and kind of breaking it down kind of step by step? Are we looking at various jobs that we have and looking at the SOP and understanding what that process looks like and where within that process there's an opportunity? What does that look like? And is there like a tool that you use to do that? Do you drop everything in, Google Sheets or you know, how does someone who hasn't done this before do it?
Generally, it varies a little bit based on how structured the product management function is at the given organization. So some organizations are very clear that, product managers, these are the things they do. This is our overall product life cycle. These are the gates. These are the deliverables that are expected to meet this criteria to go on to the next. And so when they have that, that's pretty easy to use kind of that documentation to identify core functions and core business processes. Most of the organizations I worked for in my career weren't like that. It was it was kind of dependent on what you were working on, what team you were working with. A lot of it depended on the product manager personality. So in those situations, the way I help teams is the product leader has to kind of start and take the initiative and sort of maybe outline, kind of here are the core things that I know we do, but then sit down with the team and just kind of have a conversation about, okay, in our life cycle, and I usually advise that they look at the product life cycle as the kind of the way to structure it, right? So what are the things we do at the beginning of our product life cycle, right? We do a lot of, market requirements and conception and a lot of ideation. What are the processes we do there? Then once we've got an idea and maybe we've got some business approval, we go and do, definition and development. What are the processes that we have in there? Things like writing requirements and, test cases and making sure we're prioritizing with engineering. Then we launch the product or the new feature. What are the things we do there? Go to market, customer support, and then ideally it's successful and we might need to scale it. So whatever your product lifecycle looks like, use that. And within each stage, just with your team, brainstorm the things you do, the
Yeah.
processes you go through. And it's going to be a long list.
Yeah.
And if you try to think about boosting every one of those things with AI, you will quickly become overwhelmed. So pick one or two and start slow.
Yeah. How do you pick one or two? Are there criteria that you use to help organizations prioritize which of these 40 or 50
Yeah.
kind of workflows are best suited for an AI solution?
Yeah. So I recommend that the first one or two are easy because you want to get a couple of wins under your belt. So you feel like, okay, I got this. Right. So find, one or two that either, people have talked about or written about or how to do or seem pretty straightforward. So those are the kinds I always advise that. But then the criteria we look for are, again, things that either have a lot of data, things that AI is good at doing, right? AI is great at looking through troves of data and pulling out insights. So, all the customer insight data we get, right? Whether that's from customer service calls or sales calls or surveys or whatnot, right? Going through all that data and identifying signals of features that we should prioritize. That's perfect for AI. Another thing that AI is really good at is, highly repetitive tasks, right? So the stakeholder communications example, right? Take this information, which is kind of all the latest and greatest about my product, and write a memo for my CEO, write a memo for the VP of engineering, write a memo for the VP of marketing and sales. AI is really good at that. So it's really about looking for things that are either repeatable or lots of data, things that AI is just quite adept.
And when it comes to C, there's a lot of options for solutions. There's off the shelf, and then within off the shelf, there's ChatGPT and Claude and Grok and Gemini. There are lightweight things that can be built like GPTs. There are obviously agents, which are kind of everywhere now. There are heavier lifts that maybe engineers have to design for you. How do you think about that choice if you're a product leader? Easier is better probably for those quick wins. But how does one figure out what's the right tool or solution for the problem or workflow that they're looking to fix?
So the good news is a lot of the stuff that we do as product managers works really quite well with the sort of larger, what are often called frontier models, right? Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot. So sometimes it's sort of, here's what our company has licensed and we can use, right? So maybe you're kind of stuck with that. But those are all good for most of these types of business processes that I was referring to. Sometimes there's some specialized tools. So what I try to do when I'm working with teams is sort of expose them to a variety of things to see what they sort of gravitate towards. I encourage, at least early on, give the same prompt to ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude and see what you like. In my own personal experience, when I started down this journey a year and a half ago or so, I started with ChatGPT because kind of everyone does. And it was good and I enjoyed it. And, but I started having an issue with, I didn't like the way the writing was sounding after a while. I was using it to help write some pieces and it started to feel quite formulaic. So I decided, I'd heard about Claude. I decided to try it. And I loved the way it wrote, right? I loved how it sort of took my writing style and I find that, its first draft is, typically 80 to 90% there. It's never 100%, but it's close. So I've now, what I use most is Claude, but I use them all again for various different things. So I try to coach teams to, pick what you like, pick what you're comfortable with, pick what the company is endorsing or supporting with a license. You're going to be okay. No matter what, it's going to be light years ahead of you doing this stuff on your own.
Yeah. And then when it comes to things that are a little bit more intense, what do you recommend people do? Like Claude can't really solve this problem on its own. Someone's got to spend 8 hours on a Saturday building a GPT, or maybe we need to do something more intense. What do you recommend people do then in terms of deciding how they go about solving it or whether it should be solved, I guess, at all?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always that trade-off, right? If this is a one-time thing, it may not be worth the 8 hours to invest to then have AI help you. It might just be worth continuing to do it the way you've always done it. If it's something you're doing, once a week or once a month or once a day, right? I mean, then, okay, yeah, that time investment makes it worthwhile. Oftentimes where I find people struggling is if they're trying to do something that's just too big. So break it down into some smaller chunks, right? If it's like, I'm trying to create a business case for a new product. Okay, that's a lot. Can we do some market assessment? Can we do some competitive analysis? Can we do some ideation? Can we do some, user testing, right? So if you break it down into smaller components, those things are a lot easier to do. And then you kind of stitch those together is what I will advise most teams that are sort of looking at AI as just too big of a challenge to leverage.
Yeah. I'd love to walk through an example of how you work. You shared with me a dual cohort training program you built. Tell me a little bit about the client, what problem they were looking to kind of solve, and how you went about it.
Yeah. So I started when I developed my cohort-based course meant for product leaders to help them empower their teams with AI. And I've been doing that for a while, and I gotten some requests and am now doing some private cohorts with companies themselves. And so I have a particular one client in particular I'm working with. They're a strategic product consulting. So they themselves, they work with companies and help them with their product development and either new features or new products for that company. So they have their own clients, and they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to make sure our teams are picking this stuff up and are doing it effectively and efficiently and, in a way that we can sort of mobilize it for our clients." And so I said, okay, then I kind of walked them through the curriculum and how I would tune it and change it for them. And so we started looking at, certainly the examples I would use would be examples that are relevant to the company as opposed to ones I might have made up. And I looked at their business processes, their workflow, and started to pick and choose things. So the examples and the instruction that I would give would be immediately understandable and applicable to them. And as we were putting that together, before I even got started with them, they came to me and said, "We've got another group that we want you to work with. They're kind of like product managers. They're our delivery services folks. So they're kind of on that front line with the client, kind of, they're very much customer focused. And so they're almost like product managers. They think very similarly." And so what we did is we designed this idea of this dual cohort, as you mentioned. So we have a product cohort and we have the delivery cohort, and they're mostly, I'd say probably 80 or so percent of what I'm working with them and teaching them is the same, but it's tuned a little differently, right? So the processes we look at for one cohort are a little different than for the other cohort. And that's just to make it land better for them, make it more clear for them to understand kind of how they can connect what I'm talking about to what they do. And what's really been pretty amazing to watch is not only have we seen individually these cohorts sort of catch on and improve and kind of just sort of take off, which is great, but we're also seeing a lot of cross collaboration and a lot of cross functional interaction because they have mostly a common language.
In terms of tangible outcomes, how do you think about that, or how do they think about that? I mean, you mentioned in sort of one of our earlier conversations, there was going to be a lot of different workflows that you can optimize with AI, and you got to pick a few, and let's pick a few easy ones to start so you get some momentum, and then hopefully that momentum builds and you can start, you know, chewing on some bigger and tougher ones. What did it look like for that client? What did they find that they were then able to make more efficient?
Yeah, what we look for is some of it's productivity increase, less time spent doing certain things, or, more effective updates being provided more frequently because we're using this. So we look for any sort of an improvement in productivity, either increase in the good or decrease in the investment, right? Either of those things will ramp up productivity. The other thing we look for is comfort and knowledge of AI, right? Most of these people, when they start, have an understanding and awareness, but they haven't quite connected the synapses in their brain to start thinking about AI all the time. I still, though I don't need it as much, have a post-it on my monitor that says, "What does AI think?" And I got that from somebody I know who, anytime somebody on his team came to him, he, and said, "Hey, can I get you to review this? Can I get your opinion? Or what do you think?" His first question would be, "What does AI think? Did you ask AI?" No. So, he essentially train them to sort of ask AI first. Then, so the other measure is how comfortable are they sort of, and do they think about AI first in the work that they're doing, as opposed to, "Oh yeah, I didn't think about that." And then the last thing we look for is just general job happiness, because right now product managers are really struggling because they've got all the work they're trying to do. They've got all these AI demands. They're really being pulled in all different directions. The moment that they get some knowledge and some experience and some confidence with AI and start to figure out how they're going to work it in, and their teammates around them as well, things just look better. And so the things we look at are productivity, sort of front of mind awareness, sort of creative thinking about AI, and then just general job happiness.
Do you look to identify and support champions in an engagement like this?
Yeah.
How do you do that? And then how do you identify them? How important is it to identify them? And then what is sort of supporting and enabling them look like?
Yeah. So the problem that this AI champion concept that I have is trying to solve is, it's all great when I'm working with the team and working with the company and we've got lots going on, but at some point I'm not there anymore, right? My engagement ends and I go on. And what I don't want is I don't want these teams to suddenly just stop, or I don't want, the good work that they're doing that's ideally is being sort of starting to spread throughout the organization. I don't want that to just fall off. So I have this idea of an AI champion. And so with any company I work with, I make sure that we at least get one or two, depending on the size and number of cohorts, et cetera, people sort of designated as AI champions. Now, how we select them, it's either the client sort of nominates them because they're like, yep, this is the person because they know them best. Or if they're not sure, within the first couple of sessions that I have with them, it starts to become clear, who gets it best, who's vocal, who's interested, the most, and likely then is also influential in the organization. And what we do is at the end of the training for everyone, I spend some additional time with the AI champion or AI champions. And it's kind of almost like a train the trainer, right? I give them some additional instruction. I give them some additional tools, which help not just know and understand the frameworks that I provided them, but help them to teach them and give them some guidance around, how to bring this to other functions and other places in the organization. So the intent there is that when I go away, there's still an ongoing growth and learning and improvement with AI adoption and practice in the company after I'm gone.
Yeah. As we come to a close, I'd love to ask you a few questions oriented around practical recommendations. And so maybe firstly, what's one thing that every product leader should do this month if they want to future-proof their team for AI?
The one thing they should do, I have two. So let me just think about the first, and then I'll cheat in with the second. The first thing they should do is they should get a quick set of an understanding of the AI capabilities of their team. Do a quick assessment. And I've got some tools that I've shared with people in the past around that, but a couple of questions anonymously so that the team doesn't feel like they're being judged will help you understand, does your team know what any of the stuff is? Do they use it? Do they not use it? How good are they? We'll give you a sense of where you are. The second thing is do that ABC&D, right? Look at your workflow, and you don't need to map out your entire workflow. You just need to kind of look at it and say, what are 2 or 3 areas that we think are pretty interesting to consider using AI going forward with stakeholder communications, product requirements documentation, customer insight analysis, and pick one, right? Find the 2 or 3, maybe chew them, maybe try them a little bit on your own, and then pick one, and then sit down with your team and say, hey, team, this is what we're going to start using AI for, and here's how we're going to do it. So assess where your team is, and then pick a business process or something you do on a regular basis and get AI integrated into it.
What do you recommend product leaders do if their preferred tool of choice is not the one the organization is currently paying for and is part of their official AI policy?
One of two things, definitely spend time with the one that is company sanctioned and see if you can learn to love it. Maybe oftentimes you don't love it just because you haven't used it enough and you haven't personalized it to you enough. That's the thing with these tools is you got to go in and do personalization settings. You got to go and, give it some of the content and context of what you're trying to do to get really good results. So 2 things. 1, go and invest real time into the sanction tool to see if you can learn to love it. And 2, if you can't, try to figure out why, and then make the case, right? Just say, hey, look, here are the issues I'm seeing. Here's what I want us to use, and go make the case to whoever you need to in procurement or IT or somebody to at least maybe get them to allow for, maybe provisional license or maybe a short period of time so that people can start to test it and then they can see how it goes.
For product leaders who are listening or watching this conversation and are wondering whether you and Break a Pencil are a good fit for them, what types of organizations do you typically work with, whether it's an industry or a size? Who's a good fit for Michael?
Yeah, so similar to my career, I've been in multiple different industries and a variety of different company sizes. Really, the fit comes from, I think, 2 things. 1, are you hungry to figure out how you're going to get AI into your ongoing work stream and even likely into the products? And 2, do you at least acknowledge and identify that taking a structured, systematic approach is far better than a let's just go and try it approach? The let's go try it approach, it does work sometimes with other tech, but AI is really unique in that it's general purpose, so we can use it for anything, and it's very sensitive to how we interact with it. And so if you're hungry for bringing AI in to you and your team, and you understand and acknowledge the value in doing it collaboratively and together as a team, those are the people I work with.
Michael, thank you for coming on Just Curious.
Thanks for having me, Stuart. I really appreciate it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.